Hello, and welcome to this bite-sized workshop on critical thinking, what it is and how to do it. Have you ever received feedback on a piece of writing where your tutor or lecturer has written, "You need to be more critical. This is too descriptive. Question the findings in more detail. Show more analysis. Lack of criticality. Not critical enough. Not enough argument." Yes, but what do you think? These are some of the common phrases you might receive, and they are quite ambiguous. For example, the lecturer may not always say what more critical analysis entails, or how you're not demonstrating criticality. But one thing these comments all have in common is their emphasis on the need for critical thinking. This bite-sized workshop will give you the knowledge and tools to help improve your work and avoid getting more comments like this on your writing. In this session, we will look at what is critical thinking? What does critical thinking involve? What attitudes stop us from thinking critically? And how to become a critical reader. Critical thinking is a fundamental skill that all students in academia should aspire to utilise. Learning how to enhance and improve your critical thinking will help you with the following. Academic success. Critical thinking helps you analyse complex information, evaluate arguments, and rigorously engage with scholarship and ideas. Critical thinking is also essential for analysing and evaluating information. With fake news, bias, and the rise of AI, critical thinking is crucial for navigating through vast amounts of data and discerning accurate and reliable information. And finally, critical thinking is fundamental for problem solving. Critical thinking enables effective problem solving and decision making. It is important in the process of gathering relevant information, evaluating potential solutions, and making informed decisions based on evidence and logical reasoning. But what does the word critical mean? Before we go into depth about what critical thinking is, I want us first to think about what the word critical means. Pause the video, perhaps grab a pen and paper, and think about the following questions. First, what does the word critical mean in its everyday usage? Does the word critical have the same meaning in an academic context? So, what did you come up with? According to the Cambridge Dictionary, in its everyday sense, quote, critical means saying that someone or something is bad or wrong, end quote. However, it's a little different in academic contexts. Being critical in university means being thoughtful, asking questions about what you are reading, and not taking anything at face value. Critical thinking is a little bit like an onion. As you peel off one layer, so, for example, begin to analyse the argument, there is another layer, which are more questions, and then another layer, which are even more deeper questions, and so on. So what is involved in critical thinking? As a critical thinker, you will ask questions about the strengths and weaknesses of an argument or idea. You will analyse and evaluate information, theories, and practices. And you will become aware of your own and others' biases, beliefs, and values. But where and how do you even begin with the critical thinking process? One way is through something known as Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is divided into 6 levels, often in the shape of a pyramid, which students are expected to progress through, starting from the base of the pyramid and working all the way to the top. These skills levels are knowledge, understanding, application, analysis, synthesis, and finally, evaluation. The first level, at the bottom of the pyramid, is known as knowledge. This is the ability to recall facts and basic concepts. This might, for example, include dates, events, and places. With regards to knowledge, students might be asked such questions in assignments. Who were the main? Which one? Why did? What is? And how would you explain? Above this is understanding. Students must now go past recalling facts and instead understand the information and be able to explain and interpret it. At this level, you should be able to answer questions such as, what facts or ideas show? What is the main idea of? Which statements support? How would you compare or contrast? And finally, how would you summarise? Above understanding is application. This is the ability to apply knowledge and understanding to actual situations. You may be asked to solve a problem with the information you have gained in class. Some common examples of questions relating to Bloom's taxonomy of application are: what would result if? What elements would you use to change? What facts would you select to show? And what approach would you use to? These first three parts of Bloom's taxonomy are often described as lower order thinking skills and are basically how one absorbs information, whereas the following three levels at the top are known as higher order thinking skills. The first of these is analysis. Analysis is the ability to draw connections between ideas and concepts. This might also involve breaking down material into constituent parts and determining how they relate to one another and their overall structure or purpose. To be able to analyse, students are required to go beyond knowledge and application to see patterns that they can use to analyse a problem. Through analysing content, you will recognise unstated assumptions, logical reasoning, and the relevancy of data. At this level, you can answer questions like why, how, and what if. Following analysis is synthesis. This is when students are required to use the given facts and connections to create new theories or make predictions. Basically, the ability to synthesize information together in a different way. You might be asked to answer questions such as, what changes would you make to solve? How would you improve? What would happen if? Can you elaborate on the reason? Finally, at the top of Bloom's taxonomy is evaluation. This is when you judge, assess, criticise information through the previous levels and come to make a decision to support your own point of view. At this level, you can produce new and original work. You can answer questions like, so what? And what's next? Critical thinking involves these three top levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and it requires time and skill to develop. So what can stop us from thinking critically? To become effective critical thinkers, it is essential to be aware of attitudes that can impede our ability to think critically. Attitudes that prevent us from doing this may include thinking such as, I'm not an expert, but this other person is, so I can't say anything. Everybody thinks this, so it must be right. I don't want to get into an argument. And finally, I don't want to be disrespectful. With this final attitude, there can be a natural anxiety about critically analysing texts or works by scholars you may respect. However, as a student, you're expected to think critically and question pre-existing ideas. At university, we were often confronted by new ideas or controversial information that may contradict our current beliefs or the traditions that we grew up with. And we often need to decide between competing positions. One example of when our own attitudes can affect our critical thinking is confirmation bias. The Oxford English Dictionary defines confirmation bias as, quote, the tendency to seek or favour new information which supports one's existing theories or beliefs, while avoiding or rejecting that which disrupts them, end quote. This means preferring to use information that confirms or supports our existing beliefs or ideas and dismissing contrary evidence. An example could be ignoring scientific studies that challenge a preferred viewpoint on a particular subject. To become critical thinkers, we need to recognize and overcome our biases as much as possible. Here are some tips on how to avoid confirmation bias. First, be aware of your own biases. Knowing and recognizing that everyone can suffer from confirmation bias or belief preservation is the first important step. Pay attention to emotional influences. Sometimes emotion will influence our support for a belief or position. Try to separate your emotions or feelings from rational thinking when evaluating information. Question the plausibility of an idea or belief. Sometimes our beliefs are implausible, but we still believe in them, especially when with a group of like-minded people. While anecdotes and personal experiences may be compelling, they may not represent the broader reality. Therefore, you will want to consider the quality of the evidence being used. Test your beliefs against empirical data and make sure there is evidence to support it. Seek out alternative and differing views. Look for different perspectives, opinions, and data, and consider multiple viewpoints and their reasoning and the evidence they present. Fact check and verify information. Don't accept information at face value. Verify the credibility and reliability of the sources you rely on, and cross-reference with other reputable sources to confirm their accuracy. And finally, be open-minded and engage with debate. Be willing to adjust your beliefs if presented with compelling evidence to the contrary. Being open to change is a sign of intellectual honesty and growth. When reading, critical thinking is essential to your academic success. There are several ways to become a critical reader. Before reading, you may want to think about the purpose and background of what you are reading. Ask yourself questions such as, why are you reading this text? What is your purpose? What do you know about the author of the text? What type of text is it? Is it a research report, an essay, a textbook, or a book review? What do you know about the subject of the text? What else has been written on the subject? Controversies exist in this area, and how does this text fit in it? Another way to become a critical thinker is to divide your reading approaches into 3 stages, similar to the levels we saw in Bloom's taxonomy. First is description. This involves you asking questions such as who, what, where, when, and why. This will help you gain a general understanding of the context, the background, and the main arguments or ideas of what you are reading. While this can only provide descriptive levels of understanding, this is a crucial stage to progress towards more critical thinking. The next stage is analysis. This is when you ask how, why, and what if. For example, if you are reading a journal article, you might ask yourself, how has the author reached their conclusions? How was the research conducted? What methods were used? Why are these theories discussed? What are the alternative methods and theories? Why does the author think what they think? Is relevant and reliable evidence used to support any arguments, ideas, or conclusions presented? And finally, does the data presented support the arguments made? Following this, you'll come to the evaluation stage. This involves judging the failure or success of something, its implications, significance, and/or value. You will ask, so what? And what's next? Asking these questions will help you assess the worth and significance of what you're reading. You might want to ask, how relevant is this text to your purpose? What do you think about what you have read? What is your position on the subject? How does this relate to other information you have heard or read? And finally, does it contradict, support, or challenge other evidence? You could also think about the following questions to help you critically evaluate a piece of work. Is there an argument? Not just a description or an explanation. Is the argument logically coherent? Is the author biased? Are the author's methods trustworthy? Are the author's arguments supported by relevant evidence and other people's work? It is not enough to write in an essay or report. There is evidence on both sides. Evidence is not all of equal weight. So how can we decide which evidence is better? Firstly, identify what type of evidence is being used. This could range from empirical evidence. This is evidence gathered through direct observation or experimentation. This includes data collected from experiments, surveys, fieldwork, or laboratory studies. Another type of evidence is statistical evidence. You might also use evidence such as expert testimony. This includes the insights and opinions of scholars based on their expertise and research. Qualitative data. This includes non-numerical data such as interviews, focus groups, and observations. Another type of evidence may be historical records. In disciplines like history, primary sources such as documents, diaries, letters, and artifacts serve as evidence for historical events and interpretations. You might also be using case studies as evidence. This includes detailed examinations of specific instances or examples that can be used to illustrate broader patterns or theories. And finally, you might be using theoretical models. In some cases, theoretical frameworks and models are used as evidence to support an argument or to explain a phenomenon. Critical thinking is a complex process, but it's a really important one. It can take time to develop the skills to become critical thinkers, but it is totally worth it. Not only will it help you with analysing and evaluating information, as well as problem solving, but it is key for academic success. So here's just a little recap of what critical thinking involves. It involves asking questions, analysing information, and evaluating evidence. It involves challenging assumptions and claims of other people and the sources that we used, as well as our own assumptions and biases. Critical thinking also encourages being open-minded, engaging with different perspectives, and avoiding confirmation bias and other attitudes that can prevent you from thinking critically. So that's it for our critical thinking, what it is and how to do it bite-sized workshop. Here at the University of York, we have lots of online and in-person workshops, many of which are focused on the art of critical thinking. You can find more information about these at subjectguides.york.ac.uk/skills/training.